Have you ever felt an aching silence inside you? It's not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that arises when the noise of the world dies down and suddenly you can hear your own soul whispering.
Nice.
This is not just poetic imagery. Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in psychology, believed that silence, especially the kind we encounter in states of abstinence, can be the very ground from which the soul finally emerges. In this video, we'll explore the profound spiritual truth behind abstinence, not just in the sexual sense, but in the deeper, archetypal sense of withdrawing from external stimulation in order to awaken something internal. Whether you're on a journey of celibacy, taking a break from toxic cycles, or simply trying to reconnect with your true self, this message is for you. So breathe deeply, quiet your thoughts, and allow your body to go still. Because when the body goes silent, the soul begins to speak. Let's dive into the truth behind abstinence through the eyes of Carl Jung, through ancient wisdom and through the echoes of your own untapped power. The archetype of silence, Jung's view on abstinence and the unconscious. When Carl Jung spoke of silence, he wasn't just referring to the absence of noise. He was speaking of a silence far more profound, a stillness of the body, the mind, and the world that allows the unconscious to rise to the surface. In a world constantly begging for stimulation, abstinence becomes not a deprivation, but a doorway. A doorway to something that exists beyond the body, beyond the senses. A place where the true self, the self with a capital S, dwells. Jung believed that much of our suffering stems not from external chaos, but from the repression of internal truth. We push aside desires, fears, memories, and instincts that society tells us are inconvenient, shameful, or dangerous. These rejected parts of ourselves form what Jung called the shadow, a reservoir of energy, emotion, and authenticity hidden beneath our conscious identity. But to access this shadow, to make peace with it, and integrate it, we must first become quiet enough to hear its voice. And that requires abstinence not only from sex, but from anything that numbs us, distracts us, or floods us with artificial pleasure. Abstinence, in this sense, becomes a sacred act. It is a choice to refrain not out of fear, but out of reverence. When we stop feeding the body with instant gratification, the soul begins to stir. Jung saw this as archetypal, meaning that it is not a modern phenomenon, but a timeless pattern etched into the human psyche. The ancient sages, monks, and mystics knew this too. They would retreat into silence, fast from food and speech, and strip themselves of worldly attachment, not to suffer, but to see clearly, to feel what is real. Abstinence is not about what you are giving up. It is about what you are making room for. And in Jung's view, the unconscious is not simply a storehouse of trauma, it is also the wellspring of the sacred feminine, of inner wisdom, and of divine connection. But that wellspring is subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And to hear it, you must let the body go quiet. Think of your body as a finely tuned instrument. Every craving, every impulse, every sensation is like a note being played. But when all the strings are vibrating at once, social media, food, sex, validation, dopamine hits, you can't hear the quiet harmony underneath. That harmony is your soul, and it only begins to play when the noise stops. Jung also spoke of the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your most whole and authentic self. But that journey doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the dark, in the quiet. In the moments when you are alone with your longing, your fears, and your forgotten dreams. Abstinence is not a shortcut, but it is a tool. It is a mirror that reflects what remains when everything else is stripped away. And yet our culture fears silence. We fear what we might find in the stillness. We equate abstinence with repression, as though desire is the only path to freedom. But what if true freedom isn't about indulging every whim, but about choosing what holds meaning? What if abstinence isn't a denial, but a devotion? Jung would argue that abstinence is the threshold between the ego and the soul. The ego wants to consume, the soul wants to connect. The ego seeks distraction, the soul seeks depth. And in the sacred pause created by abstinence, we begin to see the difference. Imagine choosing silence not as an escape from life, but as a way back into it. Imagine honoring your body by letting it rest not only physically but energetically. Abstinence allows the energy you would normally spend outward to turn inward. That inward flow becomes fuel for creativity, intuition, and emotional clarity. This is not suppression. This is alchemy. Jung wrote often about the anima, and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within each person. In abstinence, these polarities begin to speak to each other. Without external interference, the inner marriage begins. You begin to balance doing with being, desire with discernment, passion with peace. This is the spiritual essence of abstinence. It creates a container for your own integration. And within that container, your true voice rises, not the voice you perform for others, not the voice shaped by trauma or conditioning, but the soul's voice, the one that is older than your pain and wiser than your wounds. The voice that says, I am here. I have always been here. You were just too loud to hear me. This is the power of silence. This is the gift of abstinence. It is not a punishment. It is an invitation to return, to remember, to reclaim the parts of yourself that have been silenced by the world's noise and your own fear. Carl Jung never preached asceticism in a moralistic sense. He didn't say you must abstain to be pure or good. He simply observed that there are moments in life, initiations, crossroads, transitions when abstinence becomes a natural response to a deeper calling. A calling to step away from the noise and step into the mystery. And if you listen to that calling, if you honor it, something extraordinary begins to happen. The body goes quiet, the mind stills, the soul speaks. Abstinence as a rite of passage. Why withdrawal is a portal to inner growth. There is something ancient in the act of withdrawal, across every civilization, culture, and spiritual tradition. We find the same pattern when a person is on the verge of transformation. They are called to retreat, to separate themselves from the distractions and comforts of the everyday world, to step into the silence, to abstain. It's not because life outside is wrong, but because the self within is asking to be reborn. In tribal cultures, young people were sent into the wilderness alone, often fasting, sleeping under the stars, and deprived of speech or social contact. These rites of passage weren't meant to punish them, were designed to break the patterns of identity tied to comfort and external approval. In that stillness, a deeper knowing would awaken. They would return, not as children, but as initiated adults, deeply aware of who they were and why they existed. Abstinence is, in its purest form, a rite of passage, marks the death of one version of you and the birth of another. Whether you're choosing to abstain from physical intimacy, alcohol, constant stimulation, or even speaking, you're choosing to create sacred space. Space for something unknown to emerge. Space for your soul to rise. Carl Jung called these thresholds liminal spaces, states of in-between, where the old identity dissolves and the new one has not yet arrived. These are the most sacred, vulnerable, and powerful moments of the human journey. They are uncomfortable, uncertain, and often painful. But they are necessary, because transformation cannot happen in the known. It only happens when we stop filling every empty moment and allow ourselves to sit with the void. Abstinence invites that void. And within the void lies potential. Like a womb waiting to birth something unseen. In this space, old stories fall apart. Your attachments come into question. You begin to see how much of your life has been dictated by patterns, by craving, by conditioning, by unconscious cycles that have little to do with your truth. In the absence of these familiar distractions, discomfort will arise. The itch to reach for pleasure, for comfort, for validation. But if you resist that urge, if you stay with the discomfort instead of running from it, to begin to see it for what it really is, a teacher. Every moment you choose to abstain, you are choosing to learn, not with your mind, but with your soul. You are learning to listen to yourself, to trust yourself, to hold yourself through intensity, rather than abandoning yourself to escape it. And then, slowly, something shifts. You begin to notice things. The rhythm of your breath, the ache in your chest that you've been avoiding, the quiet pull toward a dream you've silenced for years. Abstinence creates a doorway, and on the other side is a version of you that you have been too distracted to meet. She is not loud, she does not shout, but she has been waiting for you. In this sacred withdrawal, you begin to redefine pleasure. You discover the joy of being fully present with yourself, You taste the sweetness of stillness, the intimacy of silence, the pleasure of waking up and not feeling controlled by impulse. And in doing so, you reclaim your power, not the power to dominate, but the power to choose. To choose your energy, your presence, your boundaries, your devotion. And perhaps the greatest gift of abstinence is the realization that your worth is not tied to how much you give, how much you perform, or how much you consume. Your worth is inherent. It rises in the quiet. It emerges in the pause. It was never dependent on anything outside of you. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Abstinence is that awakening. It is the shift from dreaming through life to waking up within it. You no longer need to chase highs to feel alive. Begin to source your energy from within. And in that self-sourced energy, you become magnetic, rooted, whole. But like any rite of passage, abstinence also requires grief. You must let go. You must release the version of yourself that was addicted to chaos, to needing others to tell you who you are, to filling every silence with noise. You must mourn the illusions you once believed kept you safe. Only then can you step fully into the truth of who you are. And when you do, you will find that abstinence was never about rejection. It was always about reunion. Reunion with your essence, your power, your purpose. You stop living on the surface of your life and begin descending into the depths of it, where the soul lives, where the voice of truth speaks, where you are no longer a fragment but a flame. In this way, abstinence is not a lifestyle. It is a passage, a sacred bridge between who you have been and who you are becoming. And only in the silence of your own being will you hear the voice that says, "Welcome home." The shadow and the temptation, confronting the inner void without escaping, there is a moment in every journey of abstinence when the silence becomes too loud, when the stillness stops feeling sacred and begins to feel unbearable. This is the point where most people turn back, where they reach for the old comfort, the old habit, the old distraction. Because what they've encountered is not boredom, it's the shadow. Carl Jung described the shadow as the unconscious part of the self that contains all the things we VA repressed. Our fears, our shame, our wounds, our untamed desires. The shadow is not evil, it is human, is everything that our conscious mind has pushed away in order to survive, to be accepted, to function in society. But when we begin the practice of abstinence, when we remove the layers of stimulation and numbness, the shadow starts to rise. It has no more curtains to hide behind. In this moment, temptation becomes stronger than ever. Not just temptation for physical pleasure, but the temptation to avoid, to fill the void, to run. And yet this very moment is the heart of transformation. Because what you are facing is not the urge to indulge it. The pain you've been carrying in silence for years, that ache in your chest, that sadness you don't have words for, that rage you've been taught to smile through. Abstinence doesn't create that. It reveals it. It gives it space to surface. When it does, you have a choice. You can numb it again, or you can sit with it. You can witness it. You can let it speak. This is where true courage lies. Not in denying your cravings, but in daring to meet the parts of yourself that you've buried. The grief, the loneliness, the unmet needs. They will come. They must come. Because healing is not about avoiding the dark, it's about bringing light to it. Abstinence creates a sacred container for this illumination. And what rises in that container may not be pretty, but it is true. Carl Jung believed that real wholeness comes from integrating the shadow, not rejecting it. And integration begins with presence, with the willingness to feel without fleeing, to see without judging, to hold space for yourself in the same way a mother holds a crying child, gently, firmly, with love. This is why abstinence is not for the faint of heart. It is not glamorous. It is not performative. It is deeply intimate. You will meet aspects of yourself that you have spent a lifetime avoiding. You will hear thoughts you didn't know you had. You will feel emotions that have no name. Through it all, you must resist the urge to escape. That's the temptation. Not just to eat the chocolate, to text the ex, to scroll through the feed, but to abandon yourself in the moment you need your own presence the most. The shadow says, run. The soul says, stay. And in the tension between those two voices, a new version of you begins to emerge. It's important to know that facing the shadow is not about conquering it. You are not here to win a war against yourself. You are here to listen, to understand, to integrate. The hunger you feel in abstinence is not just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the cry of a part of you that has been unfed. And now that the noise has stopped, that cry is finally being heard. You may feel shame, you may feel anger, may feel an overwhelming sadness that you can't explain. This is normal. This is sacred. These emotions are not signs that abstinence is failing. They are proof that it's working. Because something real is surfacing. Something raw, something honest. And yes, there will be moments when you want to quit, when every cell in your body screams for distraction. This is when you must remember, the discomfort is not forever. It is a threshold, a passage, sacred fire that burns away illusion and leaves behind only what is real. Carl Jung knew that the unconscious speaks in symbols, in dreams, in feelings we can't name. Abstinence brings us closer to this language, puts us face to face with our inner world, without translation, without filters. And while that can feel terrifying, it is also deeply liberating. Because once you see your shadow, it no longer controls you. You are no longer its prisoner. You become its witness, its healer, its guide. This part of the journey is not glamorous, but it is essential. And if you can hold yourself through it with compassion, with patience, will emerge with something that no external pleasure could ever offer. Self-knowledge, soul truth, and the unshakable peace of knowing that you are whole even in your darkness. The world doesn't teach us how to sit with discomfort. It teaches us how to avoid it. How to buy something, scroll something, consume something to make the feeling go away. But you are not here to be numbed. You are here to be alive, to be awake, to be sovereign. And that begins with meeting yourself in the places that scare you. Abstinence is not about purity. It is about presence. And presence is the most powerful thing you can offer to your own healing. It is not easy, but it is sacred. And remember this, the void is not empty.
Ow!
It is full of the parts of you that are ready to return. The sacred rebirth. What awakens when you withhold the body, there comes a moment. After the initial resistance, after the confrontation with the shadow, when something shifts, the silence that once felt like a burden begins to feel like a sanctuary. The stillness that triggered discomfort starts to resemble peace. And the abstinence that once seemed like a restriction becomes a portal to something far greater, rebirth. In the sacred languages of transformation, withholding is not withholding at all, it is planting. It is placing something beneath the surface, letting it disappear into darkness, and trusting that in time, something alive will emerge. In this sense, when you abstain whether from sex, attention, addictive behaviors, or overstimulation, you are not starving yourself. You are gestating something. You are building energy. You're allowing your soul to incubate in the silence of your own presence. Carl Jung understood that transformation is not linear. It spirals. It requires death and decay before it offers renewal. In the process of abstinence, the body quiets, the ego crumbles, and what remains is the raw material of your truth. From there, something new can be born. Not from force, not from trying to fix yourself, but from the organic emergence of your essence, interrupted, unmasked, unashamed. This is the sacred rebirth. The woman who rises from this process is not a product of the world's expectations. She is not defined by her desirability or her performance. She is rooted, she is radiant, she is sovereign, because she has returned to herself not as an idea, but as an experience. There's a deep magic in this kind of emergence. It doesn't announce itself loudly, it whispers. You may find yourself walking differently, breathing more deeply, hearing your intuition with stunning clarity. You're no longer reacting from wounds. You're responding from wisdom. Your choices carry weight. Your no becomes holy. Yes becomes sacred. This is not because abstinence gives you power. It's because abstinence clears away what was blocking the power you already had. So much of our vitality is lost through unconscious giving. Giving our bodies when our hearts are not ready. Giving our energy to people who do not see us. Giving our time to things that drain us. But when you stop that cycle, when you choose to withhold, to consecrate your energy instead of scattering it, to begin to feel full again, not just emotionally, spiritually, physically. Your body starts to feel like home. In this rebirth, you may also find your creativity reignited. Jung believed the unconscious was the source of not just healing, but imagination. When the noise is removed, the soul becomes more expressive. You may feel drawn to write, to dance, to paint, to cry. These aren't distractions, they are expressions of the new self forming inside you. They are the language of the feminine soul, rising from silence into sacred movement. Done perhaps most profoundly, you begin to experience a deeper intimacy not with others, but with life itself. You notice things again. The way sunlight hits your skin, the texture of your breath, the pulse of aliveness in your hands. This presence is the result of your abstinence. Because when you withhold your energy from the outer world, you redirect it toward the inner world, and from there, everything becomes more vivid. Carl Jung called this the union of opposites. The masculine and feminine within you, the light and the shadow. The conscious and unconscious all meeting in the middle. This is not a fantasy. It's not some mystical reward for being good. It's the natural outcome of being with yourself long enough for your fractured parts to reassemble. You become integrated, not perfect, not emotionless, but whole.
Us.
In this wholeness, you are no longer begging the world to complete you. You are no longer afraid to be alone. You are no longer willing to betray your own rhythm for someone else's approval. Okay, you've been to the center of your being. You've heard the voice that lives beneath your conditioning. You've remembered that you are sacred not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And when this sacred self begins to move through the world again, she does not rush. She does not prove. She does not perform. She walks with the knowledge that her worth is inherent. Her silence speaks louder than noise. Her presence transforms every room she enters. This is the gift of abstinence. It's not purity, not control, but power. The kind of power that arises from presence, from sovereignty, from deep, unshakable self-connection. And no, it's not always easy to maintain. The world will try to pull you back into the chaos. The cravings may return. The loneliness may whisper again. But now, you know how to listen without obeying. You know how to be with yourself through the wave. You know that silence is not emptiness, it's sacred space. Jung often said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Abstinence, then, is one of the most profound privileges you can offer yourself. Not as punishment, but as preparation. You are not withholding to avoid something. You are creating space to receive something far greater. And what you receive may not be visible to the world. It may not be easily explained, but you will feel it. It's in your bones, in your breath. You're in the deep knowing that you have finally come home to yourself. Living with intention. How abstinence transforms your soul's voice into power. There is a quiet strength that arises once abstinence has done its work. It's not the kind of strength that demands attention. It doesn't shout, doesn't fight, doesn't need to be validated. It's deeper, wiser, a strength that moves with grace because it has come from deep listening. At this stage of your journey, abstinence is no longer just an act of withholding. It becomes a way of living with intention, with reverence, with truth. Begin to realize that every decision you make is an energetic exchange. Every yes and every no carries a vibration. And the more you have chosen yourself in silence, the more clearly you can hear the frequency of your soul and follow it. This is the final gift of abstinence. It doesn't just awaken the soul, it empowers you to live from it. You now understand that your energy is sacred, that your presence is not something to be spent recklessly. You begin to ask different questions. Not, what do I want right now? But what aligns with the woman I am becoming? Not what will distract me from this pain, but what will nourish my expansion. This is what intention looks like. Soft, grounded commitment to your deepest truth. A refusal to betray yourself for temporary comfort. You stop seeking permission. You stop trying to be chosen. You choose yourself. Not from ego, but from embodiment. From the wisdom that was born in the stillness you were brave enough to face. Carl Jung taught that when we bring the unconscious into consciousness, we become free. But freedom is not chaos. It's clarity. It's the ability to choose your life instead of being unconsciously dragged through it. Abstinence, when held with devotion, sharpens that clarity. It teaches you to listen not with your ears, but with your body, your dreams, your intuition. You begin to feel life differently. Your discernment sharpens. You sense when something is off, even if it looks good on paper. You feel the weight of misalignment before it becomes a disaster. And you also feel the quiet resonance of rightness when something or someone is in harmony with your path. This isn't magic. It's the result of becoming attuned to your soul's voice after removing all the static. You may also find that your relationships change, not because you've become colder, but because you've become clearer. You no longer tolerate connections that dishonor your essence. You no longer chase the highs of temporary attention. You begin to crave depth, consistency, truth. And because you're no longer outsourcing your worth, you are willing to wait for what aligns. This is what real power looks like. Not control over others, but command over your own energy. The ability to say no without explanation. The courage to walk away without drama. The softness to remain open, without leaking your essence in hopes of being seen. And here's the paradox. The more you embody this quiet power, the more magnetic you become. People sense something in you, an integrity, a presence, a depth that can't be faked. You've become a lighthouse, not because you're trying to shine, but because you're rooted in your own light. That light was always there. Abstinence simply cleared the fog. You start living on purpose. Every act, every word, every relationship becomes a conscious choice. And in this sacred intentionality, your life begins to reflect your soul. You no longer feel fragmented. You feel coherent, integrated, alive. You may still have cravings. You may still feel temptation. It's part of being human. But now you respond with awareness. You don't suppress your desires, you hold them with tenderness. You ask them what they're really trying to tell you. And you choose from love, not lack. This is how abstinence transforms into leadership, not of others, but of yourself. You become the guardian of your energy, the curator of your space, the author of your story. And most importantly, you begin to trust yourself, deeply, unshakably, because you've witnessed what arises in silence. You've sat with your own darkness. You've birthed light from the void. That kind of self-trust cannot be bought. It can only be earned in the quiet hours, in the sacred pauses, in the moments when you choose truth over comfort. Carl Jung believed that the soul is not something we find, something we return to. Abstinence is one of the most ancient and sacred paths of return. It doesn't give you the soul, reveals it. Once you've heard that voice, your true voice, you can never unhear it. You may drift at times. You may fall back into old patterns. But the voice will remain, calling you home, reminding you who you are, whispering you've already walked through fire. You know the way, so now you live differently. You move through the world with intention, with devotion, with reverence for the life force within you. You no longer live to impress. You live to express. You no longer abandon yourself. You embody yourself, fully, fiercely, softly. And in this way, abstinence is no longer something you do. It becomes who you are, a woman rooted in soul, lined in spirit, awake in body. You are not silent because you have nothing to say. You are silent because you've finally begun to listen. When the body is no longer a battlefield of desire, when the mind no longer seeks distraction, when the soul is allowed to rise from the silence, we return to who we truly are. Abstinence, in all its forms, isn't about punishment. It's about preservation, about reverence, about rediscovering that sacred space where your soul waits, patiently hoping you'll listen. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to pause. Close your eyes. Listen again, not to this video, but to yourself. Let your silence speak. If you felt a shift within, don't forget to subscribe to Soul Elevation, where we honor the quiet truths, the deep feelings, and the wisdom that lives within every woman on a journey back to herself. Until next time, stay still, stay strong, and stay sacred.